Hi. Well, it's been a while since I've actually posted anything on YouTube. It's actually been 2 months. You can probably tell my hair's got longer in that time, and all sorts. And basically, I thought it was about time I put something up because my channel's looking pretty lame, and I've had a few hits and people comment, and I'm really chuffed about that. And I thought I'd follow up this because there's loads of things I want to talk about, and I've been really busy doing lots of writing stuff, so I've got quite a lot of that to talk about as well. My new series, The Shadow of Empire, I'm just released, and I'm working on Urban Myth Part 2, which I'm hoping to get out before Christmas or just after, hopefully for Christmas. But I'll definitely have a new Shadow book coming as well. I've done two. I've just published the first one. Well, it's just coming out now. If you're on my readers list, you would have had it for free. So it's always worth joining my readers list if you want free things, which you can do just by signing up via my website. Which the link should be down below somewhere. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about. Also, I've made a video where I've read a bit of Urban Myth, and I'm going to stick that up. I took the old one off because I look terrible in it. So I thought it would be good to maybe get that up there, and I'm going to read a bit of my other stuff as well. And basically that's just sort of kind of excuses as to why I haven't really posted anything. I've got a couple of subjects I'm going to post on. One of them is, well, being the 10th of November today, over this weekend I was attempting to make my one about my favourite war poet and poem, David Jones, and in parentheses, I mean, if you haven't heard of it, then watch my next video and I'll tell you all about it. It's just, you know, in my opinion, it's one of the greatest pieces of literature ever written in the history of man. I think it's up there with the Iliad, anything by Homer or Ovid or any of the great classic poets, or, you know, whatever. And anybody who's read David Jones's stuff, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So I really want to do an actual video all about that, and maybe read a bit of it as well, which I'm kind of a bit reticent to do because I wouldn't want to spoil it, but I think it's such a great work that it's kind of fair game in that sense, because you could read it a million times and the effect would still be the same. I believe it's not you know, it's just an epic war poem, and what it, you know, I'll, like I say, explain more, but what it does is it takes you know, David Jones is a guy who's a private in the British Army in the trenches, and essentially in the First World War, obviously, and he's one of the only real poets from the infantry class, from the privates, from the, you know, from the non-officer class, that ever got their stuff published or heard or widely read or became you know, a great poet afterwards, you know. And many of his regiment were killed at the Somme and beyond that, and there's just literally one of the greatest pieces of writing is the moment they go into battle at the Somme. It's just unbelievable. That's, you know, that's quite, I think that's probably halfway through. I mean, the whole thing is a build up. It's just great. It's just amazing. And what's so amazing about it is this guy was coming from a lower class background, essentially, which if you're British, you'll know in those days was incredibly hard to do in many places in the arts. It wasn't really until post Second World War that things really opened up, and a lot of artists, actors, writers from the working class got their day in the sun, as it were. Before that, a lot of British culture was very class driven, or stuff that, I mean, it wasn't. There was obviously culture for all classes, but in musical stars and that, they're not that very well known, unless, you know, only a few are, because that kind of entertainment was sort of scorned on, which is why another reason why I love in parentheses so much. It just strips away all this pretension and this. It's just, I mean, the British society is quite stuffy, and there's a lot wrong with it today. But back then, You know, it's crazy basically, and I mean, you could argue ultimately the culmination of this craziness was the slaughter of all these guys in the trenches, of all classes, but often the working class weren't really given much choice or chance, and you know, the officer class suffered greatly as well, don't get me wrong. And you know, there are others like Wilfred Owen, and who who are also great poets, and who unfortunately, you know, Wilfred Owen unfortunately never made it out, so we'll never know how good he would have been or what other things he would have done. You know, and I've read a lot of Siegfried Sassoon stuff, which is very based in the upper classes. It can be quite irritating if you're not the sort of person, if you're like me and you hate hunting and fox hunting and things like that. You've got to put all that aside, because obviously that's the culture of the day. So, you know, I've read a lot of his stuff. I've read a lot of World War stuff. Basically, my kind of early to mature, I was just completely obsessed by the First World War. I worked in a museum, and there was a First World War thing there, and it had exhibit, and I used to kind of work in the galleries, and so I see these exhibits all the time. And there was a one of the things that haunts me is there's a German helmet from the trenches. In about 1915, 16, they changed their style. You often see the spiky Pickelhaube things as a First World War German helmet, which it was at the start. But by midway, they changed these, how you'd imagine the Nazis, those kind of squared off helmets that now the US military uses for some reason. But yeah, the Nazi helmet essentially. And basically, this helmet was in the museum in a case with a bullet hole right through it. Basically, you could see where the metal had exploded and stuff. Whether the person in it survived, nobody ever know. Basically, it was bullet, shrapnel. Who knows? But it always haunted me. And one of the other things that really stuck to me from that time was a picture. This is in Leeds, a museum in Leeds, and basically there was a picture of two young guys, one smoking a cigarette, and the other one next to him like that kind of thing, with their hair slicked back and their uniforms on. And I used to look at this picture every single day, and I could just see these guys. I knew them. It's like I knew them. They were the same age as me at that time, and it just struck me how they looked like people I knew. Basically, the only difference was the uniform and perhaps the hair, and obviously the old style of the photography. But everything else was the same, and that for me was quite a revelation when I was like young. I was like, just making me realise that these people who could well be dead or died in the trenches will never get old. They'll never get older than me. It doesn't matter that they're from 100 years ago. They're dead, or I don't know, these guys were dead, but you know what I mean. Like, that's what haunts me about those kind of pictures, and that stuck with me. And ever since, I became kind of obsessed by it, and I've written stories about it. I've tried, you know, I've got loads of stuff that's sort of rooted in that. And you know, the Shadow Empire, my latest thing, is kind of an attempt to build up to it in a sort of maybe a comic book style. I mean, you could say takes a bit of a leaf out of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, not the film, but the actual comic by Alan Moore, which is obviously brilliant. And it's got that kind of idea, but it's more based before that, with the idea that the ultimate ending of all this would be the First World War or whatever. But I probably won't go into the First World War because I've got other ideas for that. I've got historical books that I'd quite like to do, or stories that I've been working on, and a couple based in the Second World War, a couple based in the First World War. So that's something I'd like to do one day. But at the minute I'm really firmly into writing sci-fi and horror and fantasy stuff, or urban fantasy stuff, so it doesn't quite fit in, because I've thought about doing a horror, First World War based horror or Second World War based horror, but it just seems kind of wrong. Like the other day, say a film I watched in one of the greatest films ever made, especially British films ever made, is called The Cruel Sea, and it's based on a book, and it's a brilliant film. It's made in 1950, and you might go, oh, I don't like old films. But you see, I love old films, because I think they're great. I just think they're just so well made, and they're always just, not always, there's a lot of rubbish old films, but like the classic ones are, I don't know, they're just something about them. I think they're just a golden age of filmmaking. Was probably the time when you had to stick on celluloid, and you can just fudge effects and stuff, and like, I've worked in film industry, so I know people. There's effects are a dodgy thing. Like, you can nowadays, people think effects are good when they're actually they're terrible, and you can convince yourself that CGI can solve stuff, and it really doesn't. In those days, they wouldn't have even conceived of that, and so say The Cruel Sea. The reason I mention it is because if you wanted to do like a horror film based around the Second World War, just watch The Cruel Sea, and then you'll go, I don't need a horror film really, because it is a horror film. The whole thing is a horror show. It's a nightmare basically for everyone involved, and I highly recommend you watch The Cruel Sea. But if you're not into old films, that's fair enough, read the book. But there's just a scene in it by with Jack Hawkins, which I think is just like possibly one of the best scenes ever put onto film. And if you've seen it, you'll know exactly what I mean when he breaks down after the incident with the guys in the water. And if you haven't seen it, I won't say any more basically, other than to maybe watch it, or I'll do a video about it and I'll tell you a bit more about it. Well, I've got the book as well. I mean, read the book. The book's a lot grimmer. But the film, there's just something, why I love the film is because it's made in 1953 or something, and it's edgy. I think all those films are edgy, but in a way, I mean, I write for Commando, so to me, these things, I love these things, and to me, The Cruel Sea is like, a couple of my Commandos, you'll see bits from The Cruel Sea in there, because it's just such a classic war story, classically done. I just think it's for this time of year, it's just really poignant, because it really makes you think that in the war, especially the Second World War, people just, nowadays people are so politically divided and say like, oh, this is that and this is that, and you don't know, and blah blah blah. But in those days, you really didn't have. A lot of people had no choice other than to defend their families and their homes and their land, and it wasn't about. It wasn't even really about politics. It was about politics ultimately, obviously. But there would be a lot of people who would never, like you see these memes now with the sort of anti-fascist fighting on the beaches kind of thing, and it's sort of like, conflating the fact that, America or the UK fought the Nazis on the beaches of Normandy, and that's for purely, reasons of standing up to fascism, which obviously they did. But it wasn't like everyone who hit those beaches hated fascism. Where there's probably people that kind of agreed with it, and that's a sad thing to say. But the fact is, it wasn't about that so much as it was about defending your family and your place. It was about saying, no, you can't. It's drawing a line, saying you can't do that. You can't invade them. You can't just take what you want and do what you want, and you won't do what you want. You won't oppress people. We want freedom. It's not like. We want freedom, and that freedom includes, and people might not like this, that includes the freedom to say whatever you want within reason. Like, you don't want to, without inciting hatred or death or violence. Those are the three things really that are curtailed by our freedoms in this society. Like, once you start doing that, you might as well just shut up and go away. Like, you might not get arrested for it, but you'll get pilloried for it, which is why you see these dickheads like Milo and all these idiots like that getting pilloried, because they're just doing it, they're saying things to make people angry, just to get reactions, so people click on their thing and they get the clicks and blah 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 blah, and then it all spirals into this mess that you've got now with Donald Trump as president. Probably doesn't even want to, I don't know, not the button, whatever your political views, I think everyone can agree that there could be a better person to be president and a better place to be. If your reason for wanting him there would be he's different to the political system, then there's plenty of people that could have done that are not the same sort of personality. But that's politics. I believe one thing, you might believe another. It doesn't really matter. Like, what I really hate is when people just won't get on because politics, or they fall out. It's been going on quite a lot now, and it doesn't even get me down. It just gets boring. It's like if you don't know what you're talking about and you haven't got enough knowledge to talk about it properly, then just don't talk about it. Talk about something else. Like, don't fall out about stuff you don't even understand. Just talk about something else. Talk about stuff you do like, you do understand, you get on about. That's how it used to be. So let's all like chill out and do that. You know, I think I'll finish this video on that kind of note. But the other thing that's got me really thinking recently is the recent 100th anniversary of the Russian Revolution, and the Bolsheviks storming the Winter Palace and all that. And there's been a brilliant thing actually on BBC Radio 4 with your it might have gone now because it was about a month ago, but if you can get it still, it's called 10 Days That Shook the World. It's a book. It's based on a book. You've probably heard of it. It's a quite famous book, and it's basically it's by a guy called John Reed, and it's basically an archetypal book about the 10 days around the revolution in Russia that basically ended with the Bolsheviks taking complete control, and a big civil war and some terrible nasty things happening, and then the Bolsheviks essentially seizing control for 50, 60 years of and unleashing untold misery and horror on the people of the Soviet Union, which basically used to be Ukraine, Estonia, all these, you know, it used to be the Russian Empire, and by the end of 1945 it included, you know, essentially no one could say that Poland or Hungary were in the Soviet Union, but anyone who knows anything about it knows that they were, even though they didn't want to be, or East Germany, all these places. Terrible time for Europe, and terrible time for Russia as well. And I hate when I see people with CCCP things and all this crap, because it's a terrible thing. Well, Bolshevism, what they did to people, and what they did to freedom of thought and all that sort of stuff. Mainly, that's the worst thing. And subsequently, just to finish off that leads me on to my one of my favourite writers, and I'm not alone in this. One of many people's favourite writers is George Orwell, the great British writer, journalist, who happened to live at this time of in the 30s and 40s when the world really was in a terrible place, and he basically is one of the few people that really has just nailed these situations. Like at the moment, there's all this stuff going on in Spain and Catalonia, and he wrote a book called Homage to Catalonia, which is just brilliant. He basically went to fight in the Spanish Civil War in the 30s on the side of the communists. That's quite and he was naive enough to think that he was doing the right thing. He was fighting for the right cause against the fascists, because he hated fascists like most people do. And he was like, you know, a bit like some of these kids that went over to fight for ISIS and that. He was like, yeah, I need to do something and change this. But when he got there, he found out it just wasn't what he seemed at all, and it was more about the communists fighting the communists. The fascists, you know, hardly, you know, essentially the fascists in Spanish Civil War didn't, you know, they bombed people out of their homes and they tortured people, and they didn't really fight, man. You know, I don't know. There's a lot going on with the Spanish and the Spanish Civil War, but what basically happened was the country was left in this place that it's only cracks are coming now. You can see basically, like, there's, you know, a lot of people in Spain don't like Franco or anything Franco stood for or any of that, so they had to put up with that for 30 odd years, and they're not happy. Like, that's why people in Catalonia don't want to be part of that government. And like, when the government goes in and starts smashing people in the head, then they just say, well, you are Franco, you've always been Franco, you are the fascist. And that's sad, but like, you know, there'll be people in Spain, Spanish artists and stuff, who'll come out in these times, and you know, things will be sorted out, and hopefully a peaceful resolution can be found for the Spanish people that they want. Because I've got some good friends in Spain, but I know from talking to them that years before this happened, Franco's not a popular figure, put it that way. So who knows what happened there. But anyway, it reminded me of the whole Catalonia thing that's happening now. Reminded me of this whole Russian thing, and then that was happening, and then I was listening to this 10 Days That Shook the World on BBC Radio 4, which is just superbly done. So I really recommend it, and brilliant. BBC, brilliant. Stop slating the BBC, or people just stop slating the BBC, because it's really getting on my nerves now, because a lot of good people work for the BBC and they make a lot of good stuff. So if you think they're biased or whatever, then just go and cry into your whatever and just watch RTV and all Fox News and all this stuff that says what you want to hear, because that's all you want is people saying what you want to hear. Otherwise, if you didn't just want people to say what you want to hear, you wouldn't have a problem with the news. You'd go, oh, the news is a bit shit today, and you turn it over. So think about that. But anyway, so basically, what Orwell did with the Russian Revolution is he wrote 2 amazing books that changed the whole course of Western history, and I think made it so communism could never really, or Bolshevism, Sovietism, whatever you want to call it, could never take hold in England and the West. And obviously they are Animal Farm and 1984. 1984 is probably my favourite book ever. I mean, 1984 is just absolute genius, and every syllable, every word, every page, every character, everything in it is just genius. Whereas Animal Farm is up there as well. And you hadn't read either, then read them both now, basically, and you'll see what I mean, because they're both based on the situation in Russia. And Animal Farm is just so ingeniously clever. I mean, you're getting the people going, oh, it's Animal Farm style porn, isn't it? That's the sad thing nowadays. But it's actually, it's just brilliant, because it's about how the animals, it's basically the animals are the Bolsheviks. Well, the animals are the revolution, and they're kind of split, and they're together at the start, and they take over the farm, they kick out the humans, and then it splits, like the Bolsheviks and the other. Basically, the Bolsheviks oppress all the others into non-existence, and start implementing their own rules, which basically means they get all the good, the leaders take everything good, and everyone else has to suffer, but they can't say anything about it, because it's a horrible, insidious, disgusting communist principles that just ruined these countries for 50 years in the latter half a century. And I know, like, people might be watching this going, oh God, you sound like John Wayne, or you sound like you're some kind of, but I'm not. So politically I'm very on the liberal left, but I'm never, like, communism I think is a hideous thing, and I hate people supporting it because they think it's cool or whatever. If you support communism, then you might as well support be a Nazi, really, because it's the same difference. There's the same things both sides. But anyway, this is getting way too political now. It's supposed to be about writing. So yeah, I mean, I want to write. I wanted to talk more about 1984 and Animal Farm, but I think I'll probably do that another time, because I've been going on for ages again, and I do apologise for not having posted for a while. But I've been working on quite a lot of stuff and been really busy with myself with writing and taking this moment, because I feel there's a time now where things have to be done and gotten out. And you might be like, yeah, but you're just writing pulpy sci-fi and stuff. Why? But I think it all matters. It all matters. Like, check out Babylon Working, my first book, which I started writing like in 2007, and basically half the stuff in that is like, I actually had someone reviewing it, and a wicked review, and I was so chuffed because it made it all worth it, basically, saying that they loved it, but it was almost like too grim, because it's like of today's situation. And it's like, I agree, it's awesome, it's that people love it, but it's also quite bad that you write something and then you're watching the world go, fucking hell, this is actually happening. The only thing that's lacking here is the Nazi zombies. We've got the Nazis, we just need the zombies now. But hopefully that'll tempt you. But go and check it out on Amazon. You can get it for free. You can join my readers list, and then you can get the rest. Well, you can get the second part. You get the first 2 parts for free. The other part's only like $1.99. It's like nothing. Do you know what I mean? Just to finish the series. And then my second novel, Urban Myths, out, which has also got these sort of themes. It's based in a future world where basically corporate interests have taken over the world, and it's a terrible, basically people are essentially, the world's been destroyed by corporatism and stuff. But I've got to go now because I've been going on for so long, and I will speak to you later. Thanks very much.